All right, if everybody's ready, I'd like to call to order the Board of Trustees of UCF, our business meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is covered by the Florida Sunshine Law, and members of the public and press are invited to attend. Mr. Heston, you're here, I believe. Would you please call the roll?
Sir. Chairman Garvey.
Present.
Trustee Bradley.
Here.
Trustee Conti. Trustee Gaikwad.
Here.
Trustee Gray.
Here.
Trustee Lord. Trustee Martins. Trustee C.
Here.
Trustee Self.
Here.
Trustee Sproles. Trustee Walsh.
Here.
Trustee Yergin.
Here.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Heston. Do we have any public comments?
Yes,
this
sir, we do.
afternoon?
We have Mr. Ken Westbrook. Please come to the microphone up front and remind you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Trustee Committee. My name is Ken Westbrook. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Transdev, the current company that operates your bus transit system. I just wanted to come speak to the board today to urge you, first of all, to delay the vote that you have coming up later on item FF3, I believe. Transdev scored first in points from the selection committee. The current proposed vendor scored fourth. I understand our price was considerably higher, but we were very near the same price, in fact a little lower, than another major company, First Transit, was on their pricing. These are two companies that run well over 150 contracts in the U.S. each, and numerous university contracts across the U.S. as well. And again, we've been running your current system. We know exactly what it cost to operate this system. We were greatly disappointed that being awarded first in points did not get us anywhere. It got us second place, I guess you could say. It appears that the selection committee was overlooking what the ITN itself really focused on, and that was quality. Quality for the students that the transit system serves, that without these students who pay for this service, they deserve the quality that they should be getting by selecting a qualified vendor. I'm not saying the company that's proposed is bad. I don't know really a lot about them, but I do know that the largest contract that they operate for university service is roughly 1/2 of the size of the University of Central Florida. So I wonder, how experienced they are in this. Their price was extremely low. I urge you to delay the vote for a couple of months to give you yourself time to look at their proposal, look at Transdev, look at First Transit, and look and see where this huge price difference is. Hopefully it's not on the backs of the employees by reducing their benefits. Hopefully it's not on quality. Hopefully it's not on safety, maintenance, or the other criteria that it requires to run a system. Transdev, again, knows what it costs to operate this system. Again, I ask you, please delay your vote. Just look into it. I'll be in town the rest of the day. I'll be in town next week. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and we at Transdev will be glad to come down at any time and meet with you. And I'm sure my competitor, First Transit, I've never spoken for them before in my life after 40 years in this business, but I'm sure they will be glad to come down and talk about their proposal. It's really bad when you sacrifice quality of service and safety for dollars. The students just don't deserve it. So I urge you, please delay your vote today. You got plenty of time. The buses that you're going to order can be delivered in 120.
3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. The minutes of our last meeting were included in all the trustees' board materials. If there are no corrections, the minutes will stand approved. So we'll begin the business part of the meeting with the President Seymour with your remarks.
Thank you, Chair Garvey. It's been a very busy and productive summer We are making, I think, very good progress against the 4 priorities that I laid out earlier in the spring. And I want to thank the team for all of their hard work as we continue to move the university in the right direction. I'd like to take a little bit of liberty, though, now and talk a bit about this idea that has come up a couple of times today, and you'll hear a lot more of it going forward. And that is this question of defining for ourselves what should UCF be known for 20 years from now. And I want to talk specifically about a topic today that's very much in the news this week as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 flight and landing on the moon. As I mentioned in my comments about our legislative budget request, we are increasingly single-mindedly focused on defining what do we mean by distinctive excellence. How do we build up a reputation through high-quality faculty, exceptional students, great research, and impact in our region? And this is one of those areas because it's in the DNA of this university. We were founded in large part to serve this critical industry, the space industry. And so this is something that I want to spend a little bit extra time on today. Last week, I had the chance to travel to Kennedy Space Center with Liz Klonoff, our Vice President for Research, and our 2 deans of College of Sciences and College of Engineering and Computer Science. And it was an inspiring day, to say the least. We got to see some of the great work that's going on, learned, among other things, that 30% of the employees at Kennedy Space Center have a degree from UCF, something I didn't even know. And that's sitting on top of our reputation in the broader aerospace industry as the single largest provider of talent to that industry, and something we've been doing for a number of years. So we're grateful for our hosts and really excited about the possibilities, particularly in research and the talent pipeline that we can partner with the Space Coast on. As of today, UCF is involved in 9 active NASA missions. And our research on those projects includes studying the Earth's upper atmosphere and the origins of planets, better understanding how asteroids work, and developing propulsion technologies for high-Mach aerospace vehicles. There's additional information on this in your FYI packet in front of you, so I urge you to, when you have a chance, take a bit of a look at that. As you also know, last year, UCF took over operations and management of the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. This is the world's largest fully operational radio telescope. I had a chance to visit earlier this year, and this is a phenomenal asset for UCF and for science in general. And I'm excited about what we can do with our partners around the country and the world in the years ahead. And just last month, NASA awarded $7.5 million to UCF Center for Lunar and Asteroid Surface Science. This internationally recognized center works to reduce the risk and cost of space exploration, bringing together the very best ideas from the commercial space industry with our world-class scientists to expand and accelerate space exploration. Its work includes helping rockets or other spacecraft land on asteroids, the moon, or other surfaces successfully and safely. This new funding from NASA also will help the center bring in more commercial collaborators. UCF already collaborates with companies like Blue Origin, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Deep Space Industries, United Space Launch, and many others. And today, I'm particularly pleased to welcome Dr. Dan Britt, who's a UCF physicist and extraterrestrial geologist, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the center's work and its future. And I also want to note that we had invited Dr. Britt's colleague, Dr. Adrienne Dove, who unfortunately couldn't be here today because she's currently with her students on a zero-G research flight. So she couldn't join us. Dr. Britt?
Thank you very much, Dr. Seymour. Can I have my first slide? Center for Lunar and Asteroid Surface Science, also known as CLASS. It's always very important to have an easily remembered acronym in any proposal. Next slide, please. What is CLASS? It's basically an institute to address science fundamental to exploration. What NASA realizes is there's a gap between the science it pays for and generates on the scientific side and its application to missions and to engineering on the operational side. And CLASS and its parent organization in NASA are built to bridge that. And the idea is to have the best possible science available to the exploration community. And what's happened over the years recently is that exploration community has dramatically grown with the advent of the so-called new space community. So we partner with 4 NASA centers and the European Space Agency, 16 universities. Our team is on 4 continents across 18 time zones, which makes telecons kind of challenging. But we also reach out to this new space community. So we are partnering with 14 new space companies and actually partnering with more all the time, in addition to 5 observatories, including Arecibo. Next slide. So this is our university and research center partners. And what's remarkable is the diversity of what you get, because it goes from the Colorado School of Mines to the University of Alberta to the Vatican Observatory to the University of Helsinki. The whole point is to bring together the best people in the world to address exploration issues. Next slide. Because basically we're a one-stop shop. We have a diverse expertise, and the whole idea is to do great science, which is our ground state, but bring that great science to the NASA and new space communities so that we can help them solve their problems and solve their problems with some of the best scientists and engineers in the world. The whole idea is that you take theory and you feed it into experiments. You take experiments and feed it into observations. You take all of that into usable data to support exploration and the commercial sector. The whole idea is that it enables smarter, safer, and cheaper space missions. We partner with a lot of new space companies. The idea is that a lot of these companies are relatively small. They're startups. They are essentially have engineering talent. And what they lack is the science depth that we can provide. So we reach out to them. Next slide. And so you'll recognize a few of these guys. Some of them you probably won't, because it's a range of major players and startups. And the whole idea, again, is to bring the best possible science to help them solve their exploration problems. I'll point out one, the one to your right is Helios, which is a startup based in Israel. And we're in discussions with them to take advantage of the Florida-Israel partnership arrangements. And what they want to do is have a presence in Florida, to work with Space Florida and work with UCF to build new hardware to extract fuel from the lunar surface. Same sort of story with the rest of these guys. Strong potential for partnerships, strong potential for doing more research in Florida and at UCF, and essentially making UCF the leader in space resource science worldwide. Next slide. To do this, we do several services. We run the Exolith Lab, which is the dominant player in providing simulants for planetary surfaces. So we have 280 customers worldwide so far. We just got an order from the United Arab Emirates Space Agency. I never even knew there was a United Arab Emirates Space Agency for $10,000 of simulant because they want to get into the game and they want to send a mission to Mars. The landing team essentially brings together the world's experts in landing on bodies like the moon and like asteroids and provides this service to the commercial community. Because one thing it's a common problem that when you're landing on an airless body, you're going to kick up dust. You're going to accelerate that dust so that it's dangerous to everything around you. And we have essentially the world's experts in dealing with this problem. Next slide. So in the next 5 years, what we want to do is take advantage of the revolution that is going on right now in the space sector. Falling launch costs, the new commercial actors, the worldwide interest. Also, NASA's return to the moon is going to open up really substantial opportunities for UCF to be the science side of a lot of these commercial new space companies. And we want to be that resource for the new space sector, because when they think about space resources, they think about interacting with the surfaces of airless bodies. What they want to do is to think about UCF, because this is where the expertise lies. And so we're committed to providing world-class science and engineering for these partnerships, and I think we'll have a very interesting time in the next 5 years. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it. So Dan's work and the work of his team and his students are really changing the world of space, and it's that opportunity, I believe, in the next number of decades that really stands as a great one for us to grasp. And as I've said to a number of people, if there's a university around that ought to own space, shame on us if it's not us. And so I'm confident this will be one of those areas as we define more crisply what those areas of excellence and distinction are going to be in the coming decades, that this will be one of them. So Dan, thank you again for your great work. We heard from our NASA colleagues last week repeatedly examples of phenomenal innovation and research effort by our graduate students and our faculty over and over again on the work that really has been on the cutting edge, and they're enthusiastic about doing more. And if I could highlight one other aspect of it, this has been for decades a government-led industry with NASA really as the heartbeat of that. What we've seen shift in the last several years, and it will only accelerate, is this becomes a commercially led industry. And so back to the importance of us building corporate partnerships and providing the value add like what Dan added, both to big companies and to those emerging companies, is a tremendous opportunity for us and really plays to our strengths, not to mention our geography. So I think Dan provided for each of you some stickers to help commemorate the 50th anniversary, so take advantage of those, of the Apollo space landing. Also, to help commemorate that, you have in front of you a couple of videos. This is our great partner WCF TV has done some phenomenal work this year, our PBS station. They've hosted more than 30 events in Central Florida, really focusing on the space industry and particularly the 50th anniversary. They've also put together their own firsthand accounts from pioneers of space and others who supported them. They developed a local series called Moon Memories. And I'd like you to see just a short clip that features somebody we all know very well.
Hotelier Harris Rosen has a precious memento hung in his office that celebrates Apollo 11.
Armstrong and Aldrin and Collins were the three first astronauts to the moon. I can't say that I got to know them, but I certainly did see them on the Space Coast. And because I got to know some of the hierarchy at Kennedy Space Center when they made it to the moon and then returned safely, thank God, I had this front page and I sent it to one of my friends and I said, I know this is a big ask, but if the three guys would sign it, I would be forever grateful. And they did. And that's signed by Armstrong and Aldrin and Collins, and I treasure that. It will certainly go down in history as one of the greatest achievements of mankind. It was just so exciting to be even on the periphery of that environment and in some minuscule way to participate in what was happening.
Share your own moon memories using the hashtag #MoonMemories.
So there's more where that came from and other memories of this important space milestone. So if you still have a DVD player that works, it'll be on there. Yeah. So thanks to Phil Hoffman and his team for that great work. I'd like to just close with a couple of pride points. Couldn't be more proud of the work that's going on throughout the university. For example, the UCF Rosen College of Hospitality Management recently ranked number 5 in the world for hospitality and tourism academics, released by the Academic Ranking of World Universities, jumping from its previous number 11 ranking. And you'll probably recall that not long ago, we also achieved a top 5 ranking by CEO World Magazine. So the college continues to be recognized, not just in our nation, but around the world. Our nationally recognized collegiate cyber defense team, who we've talked about before, and you've met some of them at UCF, will be competing with its first all-women team in the Wicked 6 Cyber Games next month in Las Vegas. And this competition really showcases and benefits women and girls in cybersecurity, an area that we really want to push hard in the coming years. And although we're still finalizing the numbers for the fall, we do expect to enroll 90 new National Merit Scholars, which would be a school record for us. Last year, 90 students would have placed us number 24 in the country and tied with Princeton, and would be 11th among all public universities. So we'll see where the final rankings came out. I had the pleasure, I've told some of you, to make several dozen calls to candidates who were on the fence, and it was a great chance to make an impression on them and help sell a little bit why they ought to select UCF. And my favorite story was a student in Michigan whose dad actually called me back and said she had turned her paperwork into the University of Michigan, and after the call changed her mind, and she's coming to UCF. So it's also a reminder that it's all done one student at a time. So, but it's one student at a time, and the effort in our admissions team puts in every year is just phenomenal, and we're going to have our best class ever. So thank you for extended remarks and our focus on space, but that concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, President Seymour, and thank you, Dr. Britt, for that excellent presentation highlighting UCF's national reputation in the planetary sciences. I'm glad you were here to join us today, so thank you. I'll be commenting on the next frontier for UCF later. Next on the agenda are the committee reports. A quick point on the process as we continue here. I'd like the presenters, please, and board members to wait to be recognized by the chair before addressing the board. So first up, Trustee Conti, are you on the phone? Can you give your advancement committee report?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Just before I give that report, I just want to make a brief statement that everything I've heard from President Seymour, and it's certainly the achievement of great science, to use Dan's words, at this university, makes me prouder and much happier to work and to service the university. So I thank you for your dedication. To move on, Mr. Chair, I have one item to bring before the board for action. And after robust discussion this morning, the Advancement Committee approved the naming of the James M. Seneff Plaza at UCF downtown. This naming is in recognition of a $1.25 million charitable gift commitment from Mr. Seneff. Pending this board's approval, the donor will be formally recognized at a ceremony this fall in conjunction with the opening of the UCF downtown campus. Mr. Chair, unless there are any questions, I move approval to name the James M. Seneff Plaza at UCF downtown.
Thank you, Trustee Conti. We have a motion to allow for committee discussion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Trustee Yergin. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe. I guess that's the end of your report.
Thank you. Yes.
Next up is the Audit and Compliance report. The Audit and Compliance Committee is chaired by Bev C. Would you like to move ahead?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Garvey. You charged the Audit and Compliance Committee with developing a board plan for oversight of the implementation recommendations from the inappropriate transfer of E&G funds to construction.
If you don't mind, could I interrupt you for just a second
Sure.
here? There is something I'd like to say about this. I'd like to commend Chair C and the Audit and Compliance Committee, as well as the university staff that worked on this, for the extraordinary work that was done in providing this comprehensive report. There was, when it was finally presented, there was an awful lot that went into it. And it was quite a challenge to organize all these numerous recommendations that had been put forward from several different entities, then to categorize each of those recommendations, provide an action plan for them, a status report, and completion date and responsible party for all of them. This was a major undertaking, and my sense of it, it was very well executed, gives us a meaningful progression to accomplishing the important and critical items that were outlined in that action plan. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it was really a lot of work.
We all appreciate it. The team and as you said, everyone in the team and everyone in the university worked very hard to put this together. It's important to remember it's a living document and things will change. But this is giving us a start. It's part of the board's fiduciary duties to govern the university's operation, management, and performance. And so oversight of the university recommendations implementation plan aligns with that responsibility to give us a coordinated and comprehensive risk oversight. So as chair, I requested that the staff in university audit and compliance ethics and risk accumulate all the recommendations, and you'll see them up there in the left corner. There's a total of 82, of which 20 have already been completed, so we have 62 pending. And then there are recommendations that are for the Board of Governors, and we will be awaiting direction to implement those as we get information from how the Board of Governors wants the universities to implement those recommendations. You'll see the source there at the top right. We used Association of Governing Boards recommendation, Board of Trustees, Public Integrity and Ethics Committee, the Brian Cave investigation, the Board of Governors, Accenture, and the Audit General reports. There's still a report coming out from the Board of Governors investigation, and we'll be updating this as soon as we have that information. So I asked them to take all these recommendations and sort them by type, like kind, together, and that's what you see in the middle, the different types of recommendations, so it'll be easier for us to work with the staff and identify who belongs to these action items, and also requested that we assign board committee chairs to oversight these different areas. As you'll see on the pie charts and in the lower area, I asked that they be ranked by risk, okay? And the reason I asked for risk ranking is because the board's oversight responsibility is to address risk. There seems to have been some questions on why we did the risk ranking, but these recommendations have to turn into requirements that the staff will then use to implement. And there's only so many resources, so there has to be a way of organizing the requirements. Now, we've addressed them by risk, but as the university gets involved in the available resources, the costs, the timelines, and the capability, they may rank things differently to implement. Our job is not to implement, our job's oversight. So again, that's why I'm calling it a living document, and the intent of organizing these by the board committees is to provide that oversight and discussion so that we know what's going on and why changes may be occurring with the order in which the recommendations are implemented. So as soon as this report is approved, then we'll sort it by committee, which is a recommendation from our meeting, and send it out to all the chairs so that they can each look over and address in their committee meetings how this is progressing. So I'll go quickly through the rest of the charts. This is just an example of our new enterprise risk manager that's now on board, Andrea Garvey, put this together for us so that we could all understand how, and she comes from industry, how risk is usually sorted. We don't have any in the severe area. We have high, medium, and low risk recommendations. The first list is all of our high risk recommendations. The next list is all the pending that haven't been implemented yet. There are quite a few. Then the completed list and the Board of Governor action items. So that provides our total. The plan will be updated and reported out at all the future Board of Trustee meetings, and that'll include anything that comes up from the Board of Governors.
All right, thank you. To allow for comment and for discussion, do I have a motion to approve the post-investigative action plan?
Motion to approve, Trustee Conti.
We have a motion approved from Trustee Conti. Do we have a second? Trustee Yergin, we have a second. So, President Seymour, did you have a?
Just to add to Trustee C's very good summary of this, and again, thank you for your leadership. On behalf of the staff, we own, as she said, the implementation of this, and the team is actively moving on it and will continue to. Our commitment is to come back throughout the implementation timeline, some of which will be done quickly, some will take months, some will take longer than that even. But that we have reporting responsibilities back to each of the committees identified, and we will make sure that that becomes part of the standing committee agendas. And as I just want to reinforce that this is a management tool. It's a living, breathing document. We'll get smarter as we go. There may be new additions. Certainly, we will move things off of it to completed items as we progress through it. But just wanted to reiterate our commitment to using this, taking it seriously, and driving to completion as quickly as we possibly can.
Trustee C, I know that just organizing this was a major effort, and now the responsibility for the committees to follow up on that, to prioritize. Did your group discuss the follow-up, not just of the implementation, but the effectiveness of have you discussed that yet? Or how shall the university go about assessing the impact of these recommendations once they're actually implemented?
And yeah, we did discuss that, Chairman Garvey, and that will be part of the audit responsibilities. That's why we tried to organize these in a manner and get them into an actionable state so that they would be identifiable and addressable. And I don't assume that we will do an extra audit, but as we're auditing in the normal course of our business, we will take all of these into account as we're auditing the various organizations. And our chief audit officer meets with the president on a regular basis and so does our chief compliant officer. And I know that he has plans for our new enterprise risk manager as well. And we will all work together to not only make sure these actions are completed, but that they're part of the natural process of managing the university from now on, that these will be instituted into policies, processes, procedures, and people will be trained on them so that it's just part of the way the university does business, which I think was the intent of all of those entities that were making the recommendations.
I know it's early in this process, but have you had an opportunity to discuss this with the appropriate Board of Governors offices, and have you had any feedback at all from them on the direction we're moving with this?
I know that the Inspector General has looked at this with her office, and that we are on the Board of Governors agenda for the Audit Committee, and I will have an opportunity at that time to respond to all the recommendations and give them a quick update on where we are and what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the trustees, any comments, observations? Anybody on the phone?
Chair, if I may.
Trustee Walsh.
With no lack of respect for the huge amount of effort undertaken with this, it's necessary. The ideation to do it was outstanding. The need for it clearly needed. A very thorough job. I had voted no in committee on this. There are a couple reasons for that. I'm going to do similarly today, but not out of lack of respect for the need to do this. This is essentially important. And the fact that it's ongoing and evergreen is very, very important. We looked at this initially on an information basis in committee, and at that moment I hadn't spent enough time looking based on for information, and we wound up voting on it for approval. The issues with it, we've got an investigation continuing. A number of us have been asked for more input and investigation questions on that. We probably have 45 or 60 days, I suppose, before we hear the results of that and how that's going to unwind and how that then may impact the list, which, again, in the sense of evergreen and adding to it or subtracting from it may be useful at that time once that's concluded. I have felt, and I could be wrong, but I'm reasonably supported by the assignment of AGB by President Whitaker back in the meeting we took here September 20th, as at the time a consultant to the university, with their background being extensive, but still to the university under a contract with the university, being the primary airtime in the report of suggestions. I think even in accordance with what they have promoted in their recommendations, we should be all over, according to their words even, the State House Ethics Committee report. I would be more comfortable were that repeated verbatim, the 34 pages of it. The BOG recommendations be given the highest priority after that. And they're seasoned in as we need, but in the sense of their assignment as a vendor to the university, we have, I think, a bit of a problem in terms of the report does indict the board very heavily. And in some ways, when we had opportunities to question them, they weren't prepared to be responsive, such as alleging conflicts on the board members going around the board, and things of this nature in terms of inappropriate behavior that we challenged in an off-site meeting and received no answers in specificity as to what those issues might have been. But in the long and the short of it, the basic mission they were provided by the then president was a mission to ideate and opine on how staff could be more forthcoming and more open in ways that we wouldn't tumble into the TCH type issue again. The report winds up being quite different than that in terms of its scope being expanded. So my urging is to have this be for information only purposes, continue to update it. Of course, it is a good work product. The thoroughness of it is quite full, but to put the highest priority on the state recommendations, the BOG recommendations, and then wait for the investigation to conclude before we finalize as a board voting commitment, as was intended in committee in the first instance.
Thank you, Trustee Walsh. Are there any other comments or observations? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call the plan and ask for approval of the post-investigation action plan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Opposed?
We have one opposition from Trustee Walsh. The motion passes. Thank you very much, Bev, for the work that you and the team put in and the administration in this. I think it's outstanding work. I'm sure it is a living document. There will be changes made to it as we move along, but we're well on our way to dealing with the issues that came before us as a result of what occurred in the past. So next is the Educational Programs Committee. That's me. I'll report on our meeting this morning. We heard 3 items for board action and 1 information item, and received an update from Provost Dooley. All 3 of the action items are on today's consent agenda. The first of those was EPC 1, which was a conferral of degree, approval of the conferral of 3,992 baccalaureate, master's, and doctoral degrees to be presented at the commencement ceremonies on August 2nd. EPC 2 was a recommendation for tenure with hire. 6 newly hired faculty members have been deemed eligible for tenure based on UCF's requirements. The faculty and the university administrative officers have approved granting tenure to these faculty members, and the recommendation of tenure becomes official after the approval of the Board of Trustees. EPC 3 was a submission for a doctorate in sustainable coastal systems, a degree program in the College of Graduate Studies. Dr. Elizabeth Klonoff submitted this new program for approval. The proposed 72 credit hour STEM program will focus on human and natural processes and components that comprise, affect, and modify coastal systems. Dr. Klonoff specifically mentioned the impact of our cluster effort and the numerous areas of expertise that be involved in this doctoral program. Provost Dooley provided us with an update and recognized 2 outstanding faculty members who recently received prestigious honors. Dr. Sudhapa Seal, a department chair and engineering professor, was named a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry for significant impact as a researcher in the field of chemical sciences. And Dr. Zhofeng Feng, an assistant professor in physics, was named UCF's first Sloan Research Fellow, recognizing early career scientists. Provost Dooley also highlighted UCF downtown for the very strong academic presence that will be at the heart and soul of this exciting new campus, and which will be distinguished by dynamic teaching and learning, the experiential learning, the research, the community engagement, and the ability to deliver a life-changing educational experience. It's a very exciting effort for us. Don't forget the celebration, the opening ceremonies will be August 26th. The final Educational Programs Committee matter was an information item also presented through Provost Dooley by Dean Paul Jarley from the College of Business Administration. Dean Jarley provided a detailed update on REAL, the Real Engaged Adaptive Learning instruction modality. He focused on enhancements to the course designs, the impact of student feedback, data related to student performance and student perception, and emphasized the ongoing continuous improvement activities. This presentation was important and significant because it involves the transformation of the educational experience from traditional modalities into ones that embrace more fully the technology that's available today, but also attempts to refine the softer skills, not necessarily the technical knowledge, but the kinds of communication skills, expression skills, teamwork that's necessary for students to be successful in the modern economy. We ran out of time to really engage the committee in the depth of the conversation I think this kind of effort warrants and that the trustees are interested in pursuing. And so we deferred the discussion of this among the trustees until our next meeting. We'll bring this subject up again, and we will allow for substantial time to explore this in all the depth that the trustees would like to do so. This is an important matter. So when you get your new materials for the next meeting, keep these associated with this one so that we can have a thorough discussion of that. So that completes the report of the Educational Programs Committee. Next is the Finance and Facilities report. Alex Martins, are you still on the phone?
I am, Chair Garvey. Thank you.
Okay. Again,
finance and
as before, Alex, if it's be helpful to recognize any trustee who wants to make a comment or ask a question, I'll do that if that's agreeable with you.
Yes, please do so. Thank you very much for doing that for us. So the Finance and Facilities Committee met earlier today, and there are a number of items that were brought before the committee for approval this morning and are on both the agenda and the consent agenda for the full board's approval. We'll take you first through the first three that we'll bring before the board for specific approval. The first is FFC1, the legislative budget requests. As background, UCF can submit legislative budget requests to the Florida Board of Governors for approval and consideration by the Florida legislature and governor. Requests submitted for consideration must align with the goals and the objectives of UCF's strategic priorities and accountability plan. First and foremost, I want to commend the administration on the requests that are being set forth and that were approved by the Finance and Facilities Committee earlier today. In my opinion, they very much fall in line with our strategic goals and our overall strategic plan of the university, specifically focusing on our four-year graduation rate and our student-faculty ratio. And to give us some insight into the plan that the administration set forth, I would call on President Seymour to give us some of the specifics. President Seymour.
Thank you, Trustee Martins. And just very briefly, as Trustee Martin said, our focus here was first and foremost on aligning our LBR requests with strategic priorities for the university. To that end, we combined what might have in other years been several different requests into one, and then we have a second one specific to UCF Restores. But the intent is really to accelerate progress against our strategic plan and fulfill the commitments we've made in our accountability plan with the Board of Governors. And to that end, we have included in this request $18.4 million, the lion's share of which would go to 90 new faculty hires and 40 new advisors. And both of those address the things that Chair Martins just mentioned. So this is a departure from how we've done it before, but I think right on in terms of how we ought to be focused, very consistent with our increased focus on distinctive excellence as we hold our growth steady. And so we want to make sure we reflect that commitment in everything we do, including our LBRs. And then, of course, UCF Restores is a phenomenal program that has regional and increasingly statewide and national impact. And so we've requested $3.7 million to continue to grow and expand that important program. So those are the two LBRs before you.
Thank you, President Seymour. Chairman Garvey, the Finance and Facilities Committee unanimously approved this item, FFC1, the LBR, the legislative budget requests, and on behalf of the committee, I move approval.
Thank you, Alex, for your motion to allow for committee discussion. Do we have a second? We have a second by Trustee Yergin. Any discussion? There's no discussion here at the physical meeting. Anyone on the phone have questions? Hearing none, then we'll call the question. All in favor of FF1, approval of the legislative budget request, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Alex.
Our next item for board approval is FF2, the 5-year capital improvement plan. Each year, the university must submit, according to Florida statutes, an updated capital improvement plan to the Board of Governors. This plan identifies projects that will be included in the 3-year Public Education Capital Outlay, i.e. PICO, list, and provides information to the State Board of Education for its requests for capital project funding for 2020-2021. The administration, again, in my opinion, has done a very good job of being very specific about this year's requests for the capital improvement plan, and have really focused on areas of great need, particularly for renovation of some of our oldest buildings at the university. So the PICO eligible project requests include renovation to the Biological Sciences Building, renovation to Howard Phillips Hall, and renovation to the exterior of the Communication and Media Building. And then in terms of CITF requests, the request is for $24+ million for Phase 2 of the renovation to the John C. Hitt Library. The committee unanimously approved this item at this morning's committee meeting, and Chairman Garvey, on behalf of the committee, I move approval.
Thank you, Alex, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second from Trustee Walsh to accommodate further discussion, or is there further discussion from members of the committee or the trustees? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving FF2 5-year capital improvement plan, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We will now move to FF3 for the board's approval, and that is the Student Transportation Services Agreement. As background, this agreement will provide student transportation services to, from, within, and in the vicinity of UCF's main campus. Service includes transportation to the Health Sciences campus at Lake Nona, the Rosen School of Hospitality Management, UCF Downtown campus, and other locations mutually agreed upon during the term of the contract. Ridership is approximately 10,000 boardings per day, with an estimated 140,000 hours of operation per year. The awarded contractor will be responsible for all day-to-day operations, administration, and maintenance of the shuttle fleet. The bus builds and related equipment orders will be placed by the awarded contractor upon the execution of this agreement, and the term of the agreement for the operation and management of the student shuttle shall be July the 1st, 2020 through June the 30th, 2030. The current agreement for transportation services expires on June the 30th, 2020. And on October 15th of 2018, Procurement Services issued an ITN, an invitation to negotiate a competitive procurement process to select the offer that represents the best possible value. 6 submittals were received on December 17th, 2018 from Academy, Escop Bus Lines, First Transit, Room Transportation, National Express Transit, and Transdev Services. The university assigned Chris Singh, our Director of Parking and Transportation Services, as decision maker. The decision maker, in turn, assigned a a proposal evaluators representatives from Parking and Transportation Services, Sustainability Initiatives, UCF-IT, and the Student Government Association. A consultant from Tim Haas, a transportation consulting firm, was appointed as an advisor. Upon completion of the proposal evaluations, the decision maker made the decision to enter into negotiations with the top 4 proposers, which were Groom Transportation, Escott Bus Lines, First Transit, and Transdev Services. The negotiation team assigned by the decision maker consisted of the same representatives with the addition of UCF Trustee Walsh, which I would like to thank for his service and consultancy on this ITN decision-making committee, as well as a consultant from Tim Haas. Skip Frizz, Director of Procurement for Red Lobster Seafood Company, served as an advisor as well. UCF Procurement Services participated in negotiations and oversaw the process. After 2 rounds of negotiations, Escott Bus Services was removed from consideration due to the lack of experience with fixed route transportation services. No single contract the size and the scope of UCF, lack of operation in Orlando specific for UCF service, and below market driver wages. The 3 proposers were invited to present to the negotiation team on April the 8th of 2019. 2 additional rounds of negotiations were conducted for best and final offers, and after careful consideration of the proposals and consensus from the negotiating team, the decision maker announced his intent to award to Groom Transportation during a May 23rd, 2019 meeting. Procurement Services, in turn, posted the notice of intent to award on the departmental website and notified the proposers of the decision. In accordance with Florida statutes, the intent to award was posted for 72 hours to allow for time for any proposers to protest the decision. Transdev, the incumbent contractor, submitted a timely intent to protest on May the 28th and will have 10 calendar days to file a formal notice of protest and provide a protest bond, which will cause the university president to consider continuing to award to Groom or ceasing the award process pending the outcome of the protest. The UCF General Counsel can explain the ramifications in either decision. In the meantime, Procurement Services continue to work with Groom to finalize terms and conditions of a final agreement in the event that Transdev does not file a notice of protest. Transdev's notice has not been received by UCF at this time. Mr. Chairman, the committee this morning unanimously approved the award of the Student Transportation Services Agreement as outlined, and on behalf of the committee, I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval to allow for committee discussion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Now we'll open it up for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, a question. Trustee C raised a good question earlier in the conversation during the Finance and Facilities Committee, and I'd like to hear the answer again from staff. I don't know if that's Scott or who that's going to be from. But the rankings of the various groups were done. Then we entered into negotiation. I'm trying to understand the process because, as Trustee C pointed out, the group we finally negotiated with was ranked 4th in that initial process. Did things turn over and start over again then? Or was that really done just to kind of do the, I guess there were 5, we got to 4 with that, and then we entered into negotiation?
Well, the rankings and the gradings were based on a specific criteria. And those are just numbers applied to experience, scope of work and equipment and all of that. And once we got into face-to-face conversations with the top 3, we were able to qualify Groom Transportation as the company we'd like to seek for these services.
Now, they were in the top 4, though, in points.
Right. As we progressed through rounds of questioning and process of elimination, they rose to the top a little bit. And they ended up being a part of the top 3.
So I'm still unclear about the process, so maybe, Scott, I'd probably address it to you, and that is we go through the ranking, and then we enter into negotiation. As I read the intent to negotiate, that's what we did.
That's correct. This was an intent to negotiate. It was not an RFP.
So we wouldn't necessarily take whatever, based on the points, we wouldn't necessarily draft that.
That's the first process to help narrow the field, and then we have full authority under our rules to then enter into negotiations
Into
with one or
specific
more,
negotiation.
and then ultimately make a decision.
Thank you for clarifying that. I know we discussed that briefly, but that clarification helps me tremendously. Thank you. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Bradley. Of course, as the meetings began this afternoon, a representative from Transdev spoke to us and pointed out that they're concerned that because of their sense of the knowledge of the cost of this is both a long-term, 10-year, and a very significant award. There's we're talking something on the order of 80 to 110, 120 million dollars, and there was a $21 million difference between the bid of Transerv and Groom. And the representative from Transerv urged us not to approve this contract now and to explore more fully the differences and whether or not those differences in costs might involve safety considerations, as well as are those savings coming on the backs of the drivers, and what is the quality of the equipment, et cetera. So I wonder if Mr. Singh or the General Counsel or those that were involved in this negotiation could address that for the benefit of the trustees.
Sure. With respect to the safety, reliability, and customer service, we do have KPIs in our contract with penalties assessed to those KPIs just in the case that the contractor does not fulfill these obligations. So we're not uncomfortable with the situation that Transdev mentioned just a few minutes ago.
Can you describe the penalties?
Give me 1 second.
Here is another thing. You don't have to go up to the penny, but give us an idea.
Sure. For example,
an ITN, invitation to negotiations. So.
One, say for example, on-time performance, the description is really the wait times. We allocate a 5 minutes prior to and a 5 minutes after. We require 90% accuracy, and the penalty is $100 per bus per occurrence. Customer satisfaction, responding to customer complaints quarterly. After the third occurrence, there's a $100 fine for each occurrence. The GPS application for reliability, quarterly, we request 95% accuracy, and there's a $100 penalty for inaccuracy per bus. Safety, reporting accidents and so forth within 24 hours or less. We want reporting at 100% of the time, and it is indeed also $100 per each occurrence per bus. Those are not all of them, but some of them.
Trustee Gaikwad.
This is a $100 million contract. If I make a 1,000 time mistake, you're gonna take my $100,000. Being a businessman, it's a red flag in my head. I just don't understand. If I make a 1,000 time mistake, you're gonna take my 100,000 out of my $100 million contract. It just doesn't make sense. My second question is not to you, sir.
Yeah.
But please, is any board of trustees were involved doing this contract?
Yeah,
So
I
they
acted
can
as
speak up more than
advisor
I
to
could.
to the team.
Trustee Walsh?
I'm less familiar with the degree of the financial penalties, but I was deeply involved in suggesting we have KPI in the first instance, which we have. They weren't a requirement of the first solicitation. As we get into it, the KPI became enumerated by us. My recollection, had Transdev been selected, student fees related to this area would have gone up by about 30%. Had their offer been selected, and we wound up with new buses anyhow via Groom that are very acceptable and based on terms that were acceptable to us. So all in with the KPI being met and the safety criteria being met with new buses, it just appeared to be a compelling situation. The team recommend groom.
Trustee Jurgen.
Chair Garvey, two things. One is I do not recall us talking about in the committee meeting this morning that this would have an impact on student fees.
Yes.
So that's.
Yeah, it's in the fee base.
I just didn't, okay, I didn't
Yes.
realize that, so that's certainly important. Secondly, if I can ask a question.
Can I just answer?
Yes, Mr. Singh, go ahead.
The KPIs were accepted by the top 3 contenders. They had no issues with those KPIs. So with respect to the question, I guess it would be yes. If you had 1,000 violations at $1,000 or $100, they had no problem. The top 3 had no problems with those KPIs.
I think
But that's
Well,
nothing.
I think
I'm sorry.
Trustee Gaikwad's point was that the penalty is not,
Slap on
it's
the hand.
insignificant. It makes no difference.
It doesn't even move my
Financial
hair.
difference. But do they have to accumulate a certain number of violations for us to renegotiate the contract?
Now you're talking.
That was not even discussed.
You have a question?
Garvey?
Well, let me go back to Trustee Jurgen.
As part of the process, I assume we checked references of similar size
Correct,
contracts?
correct.
So I'd be interested to hear what you found out as you checked references.
The most recent startup by Groom is the University of Alabama, and they had a seamless transition startup, and we were satisfied with that reference. We also did some additional reference checks at Houston and some medical institutions, and those came back fine. So there was no red flag in the reference checks.
Nothing came up in any of the references?
Nothing negative came up in the reference checks.
And you have 3 competitive bids. Does other have any problem similar when you checking the other competitors' references? Did they come up any red flags?
Actually, no red flags whatsoever.
Okay. So they were all equal in a sense?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Trustee C.
So I think I asked this question, but I'll ask it again.
Right.
There's a significant difference in the hourly rate. And
Correct.
of the $23 million, $3 million of that. Is this a business where turnover is an issue? Because with that big of a difference, if you look at the hourly rate, I assume you're going to have turnover. So is turnover a problem?
Currently, for example, bus drivers are paid by Transdev, say around $11 an hour. This company is paying bus drivers $13.50 an hour, starting salaries. So the chance of turnover with this company versus Transdev should be a little bit less. But there's going to be turnover, maybe not as much compared to the incumbent.
But just to clarify what we indicated this morning, having been involved with it, the labor rate is embedded inside. The contract is an hourly rate contract. We pay based on the hour of use of the buses. Labor is inside of that. We're not exposed to
Okay,
wanting
the
to be
hourly
that
rate's
deeply
not labor.
involved with the labor management because it belongs to the vendor.
Okay,
But
so.
they were competitive. The team did a pretty good job of checking where they were.
All right.
Pay-wise, pretty reasonably competitive
Thank
for the activity.
Did we have another question? Trustee Bradley.
I'm rereading the agenda again. The termination is 30 days on either party?
That may be an error. It was changed to 90 days. Scott
90
will
days on
probably,
either party?
yes.
Either party, mutual? or-
Correct, correct.
Okay. That's not
Either-
for breach, that's just if we
Mutual.
determined for whatever reason,
Mutual agreement.
so mutual agreement. So what happens if it's not mutual?
Yeah.
Scott, can you chime in on that?
Yeah, I didn't work on this particular contract, one of the other attorneys did. Have to find a breach in order to terminate.
Well,
So just a follow-up question then. This is an intent to award will we see the contract when it comes back to it? Will it come back to us as a contract or by virtue of,
Well, we're
Whatever we vote
essentially in
today.
the position, if we approve this, of approving the selection of groom for this process. Now,
correct, but that still requires a contract, I'm assuming.
yes,
It's linked in here. The contract's linked.
Oh, I'm sorry, it is linked. I didn't.
Oh, is
that's-
it?
That's the joy of not having.
yeah, so we're basically approving it. Now, the contract we currently have expires in
June of 2020.
of 2020. So there is time, if we so chose, to take that time to examine this a little further. If it takes mutual agreement to terminate the contract, we have to find breach.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't find breach, we sue. So, I mean, this could get quite
Would it be-
complicated.
Maybe this is a question for General Counsel Cole. Would it be unusual for us to just be able to terminate the contract without breach? I mean, it seems like they're making a pretty big investment.
Well,
It seems, I mean, I don't want to play attorney, but it seems like you'd need some kind of cause to just terminate the contract.
They are making a very significant commitment in new
Yeah.
equipment,
If I-
for this, so they have a big upfront cost and risk
put some
associated.
color on that, if I may.
Yes,
The
Trustee
investment
Walsh.
is roughly 60-some vehicles at 400,000 or so. They're investing nearly $30 million in fixed capacity to support us, so the ability to have rapid-fire termination is not what it normally would be. This is a huge investment by any of the vendors that would be chosen. What we did include, I believe we've got a number of years of the ability to buy out the fleet, which is to our benefit to buy and transfer it, buy and assign it to another party, should we be dissatisfied,
That
get
is
into this
correct.
position, to not have at that point to get somebody to buy all new buses for us, and then see a big step change in cost. So the team embedded the ability to buy out the fleet at various points with that in mind, should that eventuality have to happen for performance or any other reason. We didn't have that before, that ability in the present agreement, so we faced a cliff of having to, Transdev recommending all new buses wound up being pretty costly by comparison. The other two vendors do, where the chosen vendor wound up.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Chairman, one question, very simple.
Trustee Guy.
How important this is to take a decision today? Now we are doing discussion quite a bit and new things are coming out. What will be the impact if we table it and bring it back in 2 months or 1 month or something? Because I have no idea what's the situation on a transportation.
Mr. Singh?
We started this process last summer, simply because we know that we need at least 1 year in advance to have this awarded, build the buses, bring them to Florida, and have them striped and decal and GPS and all that good stuff. So we're kind of pressed for time. Not that it cannot be delayed, but we're kind of pressed for time, just because of the construction of the buses.
I understand. I did the bus business a long time back. They have to build it after the order comes.
Trustee Bradley.
I don't know what a delay at this point would cause. I mean, I don't know what more information we would gain by delaying, other than, we did hear a party suggest that they had issues with it. I'm assuming through our normal intent to negotiate or our normal contracting process, if they have an issue, they can raise that under their own auspices, whether we delay or don't delay. I'm assuming that there's a opportunity to do that. So I don't know what more we would learn by delaying at this point, other than two said it was 110 million on average, and one said it was 86 million.
Well, we have a $21 million difference
it's a big-
here. It's
it
very
is a big
substantial.
difference. Yeah.
We have an expert team with consultation, direct consultation with a member of the Board of Trustees involved. We have Mr. Singh,
Can I correct you? It's $23.4 million difference.
I'm sorry, 23.4. Well, okay, it's even larger than.
Every penny counts.
Okay, so unless there are significant concerns we have not covered here, I think we can call the question. Which I will now do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Who's speaking, please?
Trustee Martin's here.
Yes.
Trustee Martin's.
Go ahead, trustee.
So, just my perspective on this. I mean, this has been a year-long process in which we have had great expertise internally on our ITN team. We have had great expertise and consultation from a member of the Board of Trustees in the decision-making and recommendation process. The board members and committee members have had, these materials for a few weeks now, a couple of weeks from what I understand, and we had good debate and questions that were brought forth this morning at the committee meeting, some of which, are being brought forth now here that were not brought forth at the committee meeting this morning. My point here is that I think this has been an extensive process. I have great faith in all of the expertise that was involved, including an external consultant in the business. I don't think that delaying this decision would bring forth any more questions than have been asked during the course of the past year throughout this process with great expertise, and I would not be in favor of delaying our decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Martins. I'll call the question. All in favor of approving FF3, awarding the student transportation services to Groom Transportation, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Okay, that concludes our specific approvals that were discussed at this morning's Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. There are a number of items, 6 I believe, on our consent agenda that I will give a brief overview on, and then especially in light of the fact that I believe most board members were at least participating or listening in to this morning's Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. So FF4 on your consent agenda is the partnership agreement between UCF and Valencia College for the operations of the downtown campus. Of course, that agreement will oversee all of the operational elements of the downtown campus and the shared expenses between UCF and Valencia College. FF5 is the Centraplex lease agreement with the City of Orlando, and that is the agreement with the city, of course, to lease the Centraplex garage for the use of the downtown campus, as well as some retail space that the parking division will oversee and operate, as well as the garage itself. FF6 is the addendum to the management agreement between Creative Village SHP Owner LLC and the UCF Board of Trustees. Again, an addendum for the agreement between the developer of the housing unit in which those that will be housed between UCF and Valencia College on the downtown campus. FF7 is the sublease of the South Orlando campus to Orange County, for which Orange County intends to build a public park. So that is a sublease of that land, of which the university currently leases from the state, again, for the use of building a park for Orange County. FF8 is the renewal of the UCF Athletic Association lines of credit with Fifth Third. This is an annual approval that is needed to extend those lines of operational credit for the UCF Athletic Association. And FF9 is the 7-Eleven lease at Knights Plaza for a new 7-Eleven that will occupy the space at Knights Plaza that was formerly occupied by the pharmacy, and it includes all of the provisions necessary for operating on the university campus, such as the fact that 7-Eleven will not be able to sell items that they typically would sell, i.e. tobacco and alcohol on campus. So that would be for the approval of that lease at Knights Plaza with 7-Eleven. So all of those items are on the consent agenda for the board's approval. And then we had 2 informational items presented at this morning's Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, one of which was the capital facilities report follow-up that we requested as a committee to ensure that there was consistency in the reporting of all of the projects in their current updates relative to budget and time frame. And then secondly, Dennis Crudell gave us an informational item updating us formally as required of the line item vetoes in the governor's budget that affected the university, very specifically the dollars that were to be allocated towards the operations of the downtown campus, as well as the dollars that were to be allocated for a bridge. And Dennis gave us an update on that, as well as formally informing us of the governor's line item veto. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. I'd like to also commend the trustees for the questions that they asked on this FF3 item on the transportation. This is the kind of engagement that we really want, and so thank you for your participation on that. Next is the nominating and governance report. Trustee Yergin, are you prepared for that report?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I am. And our committee's been busy. We met on June 24th and finalized the updated presidential selection process. The presidential selection process was revised to remove language regarding semifinalist candidates, and that was approved unanimously and is on the consent agenda as NG1. NG2 was on the consent agenda, was also discussed at the June 24th meeting, and that was to amend our nominating and governance committee charter. We reviewed the charter, and it was revised to have the committee review the self-assessment of each committee that each committee will be performing. We met this morning. I believe all, if almost all, or if not all, of the trustees were at the meeting this morning. We had a number of items to go through this morning. NGC3 through NGC7 are regulations. All five of those are all on the consent agenda. All five of the regulations were subject to public comment. There was only one public comment that impacted one of the items, not significant, but it was taken into consideration into what was approved by the committee this morning. So I'll just touch on those briefly. NG3 relates to amendments related to clarifying some items and regulations related to tuition and fees. It's important to notice that there were no tuition and fees that were increased as part of that process. That was approved unanimously. NG4 was regulations. Proposed amendments to regulations would add new language and regarding the employee tuition reimbursement program, the employee tuition program, and that was considered and also approved unanimously. NGC5, UCF 4.01 was a proposed amendment to clarify what vendors could come on property and who approved them, and gave the HR department authority to approve vendors coming on property that were related to the HR functions. NG6 was an amendment which removes a reference to the materiality guidelines that we rescinded 2 months ago in the May BOT meeting. So that was just a cleanup item. NGC7 related to regulations that we look out each year this time of year, student conduct issues. There were a number of different items discussed as part of that. They were discussed. Ms. Cook made a great presentation this morning on those items, and I know many of you were here, and they've been in your material, so I'm not going to go through them in detail, other than to say that they were posted as the other ones, and there were no comments on the postings. NG8 relates to the delegation of authority of a senior management official for a classified program. Our President Seymour is in the process of getting that classification. Until he does, we need to delegate that authority to someone else in the organization, and it's been delegated to, assuming we approve it today, we delegate it to our Vice President of Research. NG9 was the appointment of Jeanette Schreiber and Danny Cavallo to the Central Florida Clinical Practice Organization Board. The NG10 was the appointment of a board member to the UC FRF board as Misty Shepard. NG11 was changes that were approved this morning related to the UCF Foundation bylaws. Those changes came to us from the UCF Foundation board, but needs to go through this board for approval. Those changes were discussed and approved this morning unanimously. NG 12 was related to UCF, or is related to UCF Foundation Board appointments. That was approved unanimously this morning. NG 13 was a revision in the leadership statement revision. This is connected to the residential selection process because this is used as a guideline for the president that were selected. Trustee C had made some recommendations that were to make it more consistent with the AGB comprehensive guide to presidential searches. So we took those in consideration at our last meeting and then approved them this morning. And then NG 14, the last item on the consent agenda, is related to adoption of board operating procedures. These are procedures that have come out of the process of all the suggestions that's being led by the audit committee and certain procedures that we want to go ahead and implement. I'm certain there'll be more that'll follow this over time, but we wanted to get some of those implemented formally. So those were discussed this morning and approved unanimously also. So each of those items are approved unanimously and on the consent agenda. And then the last item, Mr. Chair, we began the process this morning of reviewing the Board of Trustees bylaws, and General Counsel Cole is going to send out a notice to all the trustees with a copy of the bylaws and ask for comments. Once we get those comments, we'll sort through those and consider those and bring that back at a future meeting. So thank you for the time. That's my report.
Thank you very much. We look forward to the presidential search matter as well.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We also discussed, and that's important, I apologize, I forgot that. We talked about wanting to make sure we had the timing right with the presidential search, and at your request, Mr. Chair, our committee is going to talk to some outside experts or counsel and get their opinion that will weigh into our considerations related to the presidential search. So thank you for that reminder, a gentle reminder.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bill.
Yes, sir.
All right, that completes then the formal reports. We have next the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent
Mr. Chairman,
agenda?
I'd like to move item EP1 off the consent agenda, and with that, I would move items EP2 through NG14, the approval.
All right, we have a request to move EP1 off the consent agenda. All the others, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second for approval of all the others?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The consent agenda is approved with the exception of EP1, the conferral of degrees for summer 2019 commencement ceremonies.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the approval of EP1 with acclamation from this board. We have 3,992 people whose lives are changed. And if I can think of the probably hundreds of people each life will change, I think that deserves a special motion by this board. So I move that approval and commend these, all of us, the board, the staff, the faculty, and most importantly, the students who will receive these degrees. I move the approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Trustee Bradley. Without objection, the EP1 is approved by acclamation.
Thank you.
All right, new business. We have one very significant item of new business, the election of a chair and vice chair for the UCF Board of Trustees. Trustee Ergen, would you please lead us in that discussion?
Yes, sir, I'm happy to do that. First of all, before we do that, I would like, on behalf of our committee and I believe the whole board, to thank you, Chair Garvey. You're not expecting to step into this role, but I can't imagine anyone could have done any better. You've done an outstanding job. You've shown tremendous commitment to the board, the university. You've been a great leader of us and representative of the board and the school. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate all you've done. So we have a standard process for going through the election of a chair and vice chair. In short, the process includes nominations from the board that then come to our committee. We had a number of board members nominated. We had 3 that asked to withdraw their nominations: Trustee Conti, Trustee Lord, and Trustee Yergin, for various reasons. Asked for the nominations to be withdrawn. The committee went through, looked at the nominations, and after some discussion, our recommendation is to nominate Chair C as our new board chairman, and then Chair Martins as the vice chair. And so on behalf of the Nominating Governance Committee, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, thank you. We have a motion for Trustee C to serve as chair for the next 2 years, and Alex Martins to serve as vice chair of the UCF Board of Trustees. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I had just a brief question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Walsh.
Just the process, couple of folks in the community raised that we had a good solicitation for nominations due by the 19th of April at 5 p.m. I think 10 days after that, there was a posting of the next governance committee meeting with the agenda showing the results of that. My recollection was we had at that point, Martin's 3C2 for chair. I guess something changed in the interim. It was my clear recollection of what was published, and those who asked who's going to become chair, I thought it looks like based on the nominations would be Alex. And so I'm just how do I respond?
Well, a couple of thoughts. My understanding is not my understanding. That was not a vote. Those are just nominations.
Right.
And so my recollection is, and I'd be happy to, and I'm not sure it's relevant because they were just nominations. That was not a vote.
Exactly.
And the Nominating Governance Committee, stands by its recommendation. However, my recollection, the documents I've seen, it was 3-3. Again, I think, I'm not sure the relevance of how many it is because they were nominated and we made the selection that we did. I do not recall any documents being changed. My recollection of the whole process through was it was 3-3. I believe that's consistent. Staff's
The way the process works, the nominations are a guide.
nominations are just nominations. They're not really even a guide.
Okay.
They're just nominations that
Got it.
the committee then takes into consideration and then they discuss who should be selected.
And I also learned if somebody nominates you and you're not aware of it, that person cannot vote. Am I correct?
If you are nominated, and I'm gonna, Mr. Cole, please correct me if I'm
That
wrong.
will be better. I want.
Okay, no, I agree.
Let him, he get paid.
Yeah.
That's over. I think that's over.
According to our nominating process, if a trustee is nominated, that trustee cannot vote for themselves. They're allowed to withdraw their nomination, and then they're free to vote for the remaining nominees.
So it's as crazy as it sounds. I'm not saying change anything. If I don't know, and if I nominate him, her, and him, so I take them out from the voting process. So what is the process? What would you do?
So anyone who is nominated can say, I'm not willing to serve.
At what point he has to say?
Any point up to the time of the meeting or at the meeting, either time.
After meeting or today's meeting? That's my question.
During the nominating committee meeting,
During the nominating committee?
correct.
So, makes sense, because I was confused and this is the first time I saw, so I had no idea. But then I realized somebody nominated me, so I can't vote, and I was out of country for a whole month. But I thought then you vote on the day of today, but I'm learning, so.
Right, so we include that information in the materials that are sent out prior to the nominating committee, so that, in fact, we actually sent out who was nominated, the number of nominations they received. So those people should have all been informed that they had in fact been nominated, and if they chose not to participate, they just needed to let us know.
For clarification, though, the selection of the chair and the vice chair rests with the full Board of Trustees.
That is correct.
So we have a recommendation from the governance committee, but if we choose to move in a different direction, that's up to us.
No, that's not the question. The question is just how a board of trustee votes,
Yes.
Because if somebody, I nominate him, then he's out. He just can't.
No, he can withdraw.
Or I can vote for anybody other than myself. too. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Oh, so person can vote for other
So
person?
if you're nominated, you just can't vote for yourself
Okay,
in that process.
that's good. Because otherwise you go out of the vote. I mean, you can vote for nobody. I'm like,
All right.
So to just finish the thought, so all it takes is one nomination to be considered by the committee.
Right.
The committee then makes a recommendation to this board, and this board is free to vote on any trustee that they wish to be chair and vice chair.
I rather rely on my chairman for the nomination because they work hard. But just learn, it's good to learn. So and it's a new, because when I come, he came by force and Marco went out by force, so. And this is the first time election, so I better be clear about it. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay.
But if
We
Scott,
have-
he clarified for me before, it's clear that conflict thing that was for the committee meeting, it's not for this
No.
meeting.
Yes, the
It's
board
all-
can take whatever action it wants right now.
Got it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, I will call the question on approval of the motion to approve Beverly C. as chair of the UCF Board of Trustees and Alex Martins as vice chair of the UCF Board of Trustees. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All aye. There is no nay or nothing.
The opposed, like sign.
Just became chairman.
The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Congratulations.
That's a new chapter.
Congratulations, Vice Chair Martins. Thank you very much. So we all look forward to working with you in your new roles. And President Seymour, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, first of all, I would very much like to congratulate Trustee C and Trustee Martins. I am really looking forward to working with both of you in the coming year or whatever period, and appreciate your leadership, your vision, and your commitment to UCF. So excited about what that holds. Second, I don't know where to start in thanking you, Chair Garvey, for the work you have done. I feel like we're blood brothers. We sort of landed unexpectedly in these places, but I couldn't ask for a better, more committed, passionate partner. And I want to thank you on behalf of all of the UCF family. And I want to thank you personally for your mentorship, your guidance, your support, and your long-term care for UCF. And I couldn't be more appreciative. And we have a little gift to recognize you, if you don't mind. So would you come this way? Sure.
It better be good. And Board of Trustees should give him something too, if it's from UCF.
Okay, Beverly, would you like to make any comments?
Well, thank you,
She's overwhelmed.
Chairman Garvey. Speechless. Well, I wanted to start by thanking you so much for stepping in and getting us through these really rough times. It took your guidance and leadership to get us steady and to help us get President Seymour on board. And I couldn't have thought of a better person to help get us through all of this. And thank you for all you've done for us. I want to thank my fellow colleagues here for your vote of confidence. And I really look forward to working with all of you to see what we can do to advance our university strategically and to make sure that we give these students, the faculty, the administration, and our leadership everything we can do to move us forward and advance us to the great university that I know we can be. I really look forward to working with you, Thad. I know we've talked quite a bit, and I think we have a lot of consensus on what we think would be best to work forward and work with all of you to achieve that. And finally, I just want to say I've worked with UCF for over 20 years. I hired many students, funded research, been a donor, worked with the faculty and with the deans, and I have 2 daughters that are alum, and I'm now an honorary alum with Chair Garvey. So it's a wonderful university. We've achieved a lot, and I know we can achieve even more greatness, and I look forward to being part of that. And I just want to, I always say how much over that 20 years UCF has moved from being a quiet little university to being a university that's involved in everything that goes on in our community. And I look forward to being part of making that happen even more. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat. You know, I have absolutely no doubt about your ability to manage this role as successfully and even more successfully than you have in the contributions you've made. You've been very significant in the Audit and Compliance Committee and the detail involved in helping us get through the difficulties that we were facing. And Thad, also to you, stepping in, a very solid and steady hand. And though it has interim involved in it, you've been looking forward and taking this mantle very seriously and not acting in any way as an interim, in my view, but a significant focus on us moving forward. So thank you for that. I have just a few announcements to make, and then I'd like to make a couple of comments of my own. First of all, the commencement, of course, is on August 3rd. The College of Medicine's white coat ceremony will be on August 5th. The important, very important football kickoff luncheon is August 22nd. Our next Board of Governors meeting is August 28th and 29th at Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers. The next Board of Trustee meeting is on September 19th. I want to mention also that the Board of Governors meeting on October 29th and 30th at the University of Florida, that the Trustee Summit will take place on the 29th. If a trustee of UCF does not appear at that meeting, they're going to hear about it from the Board of Governors and the incoming Governor Kitson. This is very important, so all of you, please make a note of that. We want to see you there.
Can you repeat one more time? What was that?
It's October 29th at the Board of Governors meeting, the Trustee Summit, which is training and discussion of the responsibilities and obligations of trustees, and the expectations for the trustees will be addressed there. So Governor Kitson has particularly emphasized the importance of that, and I want all of you to accommodate him in that if you can. So I'd like to make a few comments, if I might, and I'd like to start with a quote. And it is that every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And that famous quote is from Seneca the Younger, who was born in the year 5 BC and was one of history's great Roman philosophers and orators. And here's another meaningful quote. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. That is also from Seneca, a very, very wise man. So both of these revelations, both of these observations have relevance to our experience over the past 10 months, even though that guidance was given over 2,000 years ago. When John Hitt, this institution's revered and esteemed leader, retired in 2018 after 26 years of building UCF into an important and formidable university from its modest beginnings, a beginning ended. A new beginning is now emerging, and contained within it are new directions, shifting points of emphasis, and if we are wise, greatness we can barely imagine today. But as Seneca noted, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man be perfected without trials. The same could be said of an institution. And if greatness is to be achieved, even more responsibility falls on the leaders to fulfill their obligations with diligence and care. UCF over the past 10 months has endured its most challenging trial since its founding in 1963. We have suffered the ordeal that Seneca spoke of centuries ago. The question before us now is whether this gem we inhabit will be polished and perfected through the struggle we've experienced. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind about the outcome. We've taken responsibility for the mistakes that were made and have made major changes in our organizational structure, our personnel, our training, oversight, and reporting to make sure they don't happen again. It's time to move forward and resume the upward trajectory we've enjoyed for over a quarter of a century. Just take a moment to reflect on where we are and what the future holds if we act thoughtfully, wisely, and with determination to fulfill the opportunities before us. We have achieved scale. We're the second largest university in the nation, over 68,000 students. And when size and quality combine, the collective impact accelerates. We are big enough, but we are also a Carnegie I research university and rank among the top 4 university in the state. We rank among the top 4 universities in the state in the performance funding metrics of the Board of Governors. We are in the process of shifting our emphasis to improving quality. We're hiring a total of over 200 additional faculty and plan on earning preeminence in the near future. A successful transition in this direction will have a massive impact on this region and the state. We are uniquely situated in the 4th largest growing and fastest growing metropolitan areas of the country. Demographic realities suggest this growth is likely to continue for at least the next 20 years. We have one of the top 10 airports in the nation, and Brightline, which is the new high-speed rail line, will soon connect Miami, Orlando, and the Tampa-St. Petersburg area. The business climate in Florida is among the very best in the nation, and businesses moving here need and want a highly trained and skilled workforce. UCF is and will continue to be a magnet for companies with those needs. And unlike non-metro universities, many of our graduates want to and will stay in this area if the jobs are here for them, and they will be. It's not hard to notice, it's hard not to notice the university buses moving through the area daily with the Partnership University and Opportunity emblazoned on their sides. It's true. Lockheed Martin alone hires over 700 interns from UCF each summer to work for them. And we produce, as President Seymour noted earlier, more aeronautical engineering graduates every year than any other university in the nation. 50 miles to the east is the Cape, one of the largest collections of advanced scientists and space experts anywhere on the planet. If anyone doubts where our next frontier is likely to be, take a look at the recent picture of Roger Branson in his spacesuit that he will wear when Virgin Galactic blasts off next year. Or Elon Musk talking about the launching of his SpaceX rocket to Mars. Right here in our own backyard is Disney World, the most visited vacation destination on the planet, with average attendance of more than 52 million every year. And its president, George Kalogridis, is a graduate of UCF. I can't omit our athletic teams. John Hitt used to say that athletics is the front porch of the university. Well, the whole nation knows about UCF, perhaps significantly influenced by the excellence of our football and basketball programs, but also because of the David versus Goliath image we've built as we've challenged major programs and emerged victorious. For sure, the Knights are the people's champions. These are all noteworthy realities, but the one I most admire and get most enthused about are the 68,000 students that have chosen UCF. This is a very special group. It's been my observation over the past decade that they are here to get an education. 47% are minorities, and over 20% are the first in their families to have the opportunity to attend college. They have many interests, as all young people should have. But it seems to me that for the most part, they appreciate the opportunity before them and are absolutely determined to make the most of it. It's because of them and for them we are all here. It's because of them and our responsibility to them that we must make the most of our new beginning and use the trials we've experienced over the past 10 months to help perfect ourselves and polish this gem named UCF. Today, the Board of Trustees has elected Beverly C. as our new chair and Alex Martins as our vice chair to lead us forward. We are blessed to have people of such high character, talent, and ability to volunteer their time on behalf of our students. We should all be grateful for the trustees that so unselfishly serve UCF through good times and difficult ones. We are blessed as well with an administration and faculty committed to pursuing excellence and upholding the highest standards of the academy. And I salute Thad Seymour, who is doing an incredibly effective job as our interim president. We will embark on a search for a permanent president at the appropriate time. With the strengths UCF possesses, we should be able to attract a world-class group of candidates. And I will enthusiastically continue as a trustee until I am term limited next January. So as we adjourn this meeting and I pass the gavel to Chair C, please join me in the famous UCF cheer. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Charge on!
Hear, hear.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.